Welcome to the Beyond You podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. You remember the conversation, you replay it, you know what was said, you know how it made you feel. And then they look at you and say completely calmly, that never happened. Or you're twisting things again. Or you always do this. You make everything into a big deal. And we don't realize that something shifts. Not dramatically, though, just this quiet little tremor, right? Just in the center of you. And you start to think, maybe they're right. Maybe I did misremember. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am too much. And here's what I need you to hear just before we go any further. That moment, that quiet tremor is not a sign that you were wrong. It may be a sign that someone has been working very hard to make you feel that way. But I want you to stay with me, okay? Because what we are talking about today has been a topic that's been coming up in my sessions, might be the most important conversation you have all month. So, hey, it's Samantha Saunders here. Welcome to Beyond You podcast, the space where high achieving Black and Brown professionals come to heal, grow, and come back home to themselves. Of course, if information resonates with you, anybody's welcome. But of course, I'm talking to a virtual woman of color here. But if you're new here, I'm a licensed virtual counselor. I've worked with women navigating some of the most confusing, painful relationships, narcissistic relationships with parents, partners. I just want to make sure that we are healing and being able to pass and establish healthy, nourishing connections. So if you're returning, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. I love having you guys tell me in the comments or just when you're talking to me, you're letting me know that you're listening. So I really appreciate that. But before going any further, if what you just heard in the opening landed somewhere in your body, I need you to just hit subscribe. If it's red, just hit subscribe there. Turn on notifications because this conversation is one of the most important we've had it on just on this channel, right? Because I know when it comes to gaslighting and working through things and recognizing what it is, I want you to be so good at this. I want you to be at your best self, right? This is my ultimate goal. But today we're talking about the 7 signs that someone may have been twisting your reality, not to label anyone, right? I'm not trying to do that, but just to give you language for something you might have been feeling just within my sessions and just within our practice. So understand that I got you. Okay. So you might be feeling it for a long time, but without being able to name it fully. So we're gonna do that here. But at the end of this episode, I want you to be able to trust yourself just a little more than you do right now. Yeah? Okay, can we do that? That's what we're the goal. So let's go.
Welcome to the Beyond You podcast, where we have real conversations about healing, trusting yourself again, and building the kind of relationships that actually feel good. I'm Samantha, and if you've ever felt like you're just going through the motions, like you're doing all the right things but still feeling disconnected, you're in the right place. Because here we go beyond the surface, beyond the hurt, beyond the patterns that keep you stuck. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's get into it.
So let me tell you about a woman that I'll call Camille. Camille is sharp. She's educated. She's accomplished. She's the kind of woman who handles everything with grace. From the outside, she has it all together. And inside, and you might resonate with this, that she's been quietly falling apart for 2 years. So she came to me describing her relationship this way. I feel like I'm losing my mind. She mentioned, I can't trust anything I remember. I know what he said to me last Tuesday, but when I bring it up, he swears it happened differently. And the way he says it, so calmly, so confidently, I start to wonder if I'm the one who's confused. So she started keeping screenshots, right? And this is when you know you start trying to document everything to make sure that your reality is real. But it wasn't until the case. When that happens, you just try to prove you're not crazy, that you weren't the one that was crazy. So she told me something that I had never forgotten, that I used to be so certain of myself. Now I second guess everything. I can't even trust my own feelings anymore. When she mentioned this, I definitely just resonated with this because Camille wasn't losing her mind. Camille was experiencing something that has a name, and understanding what was happening didn't fix everything overnight, right? But it gave her back something that she had completely almost lost. So it gave her back her own reality. And that's what today is for. So let's talk about what is actually happening when someone twists your reality. I don't know if you recognize this, you probably have. You're watching this channel or just other channels talk about gaslighting in general. But the term you've probably heard is gaslighting, right? And I want to be thoughtful with that word because it get used a lot sometimes and gets used really loosely. And a single disagreement is not gaslighting. One moment of forgetfulness is not gaslighting, okay? Imperfect communication is not gaslighting. So I think sometimes we just need to know exactly what it is. So, gaslighting is a pattern, it is a consistent, repeated behavior that causes you to doubt your own perception, memory, feelings, and sense of reality. It can happen in romantic relationships, in families, in friendships, in workplaces, and it often doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It's those small moments. And as a therapist, I don't diagnose the people in your life. I can't tell you definitively what someone else's intentions are, even though it might sound similar, as I mentioned, like they sound similar to this. But what I can do is help you recognize patterns and help you decide what those patterns mean for you, because that's what's most important. So, a better way, I mean, here are 7 signs that someone may be twisting your reality. And I want you to notice how your body responds. You know, we love some body work over here. I want you to notice how your body responds when I name each one. Not your thoughts, but your body, because your body often knows the truth before your mind does. Okay. It takes a bit to catch up. And definitely explain this quite a bit. So let's go with sign number 1. They deny things that clearly happened. This one used to drive me crazy whenever I go through this. I call this just like, it's like they just erased the whole event. Like it just didn't happen. This is the one that makes you feel the most unsteady. You bring up something that happened, something you remember clearly, and what happens? Sometimes it'd be something that hurt you, right? And they flatly deny it. Not, I don't think it went that way. Not, that's not how I remember it. Just that never happened. A real life example of what this can look like, and you're in a relationship and he said something cruel about your body in front of friends. This is an example. You bring it up the next day. He tells you with complete calm that he never said it, that you imagined it, that you're remembering a conversation that didn't exist. Like they just erased the whole thing. It's just crazy work how they just do that. So you go back through your memory trying to find where you went wrong, and eventually the uncertainty starts to replace what you know. It just becomes a whole mess. And it's just this mental gymnastics that tends to happen. But we don't know this emotional impact of this, right? So you stop trusting your own memory. You start looking for external evidence, receipts, screenshots, witnesses, just to validate your own experience. That's an exhausting and heartbreaking way to live. So, your self trust question for this sign, I want you to write it down before you bring it up. Before the conversation, write exactly what happened and how it made you feel. you got to have your written record. It has to exist before the version of events try to replace yours. You have to. It's unfortunate, but it just helps you know, like, this is what happened. Sign number two, they minimize or mock your feelings. And I call this the feeling dismisser, right? Like, this one is a little more quieter though, but just as damaging. It's not the way they deny what happened, it's that they make it feel ridiculous by being affected by it. So you're crying over that, really? Why are you making this into such a big deal or such a big thing? Or one I've heard my clients say, "Oh, God, you're so emotional." Or the version that sounds almost gentle and lands just as hard. I just don't understand why you feel that way about something so small. I'll have to give examples. So, say your mother makes a comment about your weight at a family dinner. Later, you try to tell her that it hurt. She sighs and says, "You've always been so sensitive. I just was joking. You need to develop thicker skin." And instead of receiving any acknowledgement, you leave the conversation feeling embarrassed that you brought it up at all. So we don't realize the emotional impact this has because what you did is what you learned to bury your feelings before they can be laughed at all. You stop bringing things up, and then you start telling yourself that your feelings are invalid, avoiding conflict because someone you love keeps confirming that they aren't. Right? So, your self trust question for this one, for this sign, is I want you to ask yourself, if a person you love came to me with this feeling, would I tell them they were being ridiculous? If the answer is no, your feelings deserve to be honored. You can write in your journal, say it out loud to yourself, or share it with someone who holds it with care, or someone you trust. Your feelings are information, your emotions are information, and they belong to you. I feel like people tend to give their opinion on what emotions should be or how you should be feeling. They're literally not in your body. It is not possible to do. Sign number three, they rewrite the story so you become the problem. Ah, this happens so many times. It's crazy how that's happened. This one is particularly disorienting because it happens so fast, you almost don't even catch it. So you go into a conversation to address something, right, that they did. You come out of it apologizing for bringing it up. Ain't it crazy? Like, you're feeling the way, but apologize for it. So you raise a concern, and somehow by the end, you're the one who was wrong for raising it. Your tone was the problem. Your timing was the problem. The fact that you brought it up at all was the problem. So, the example of this is at work, your manager takes credit for a project you led. You bring it up privately, right? Trying to be respectful professionally. And somehow the conversation ends with them telling you that you have a chip on your shoulder and that this kind of attitude is going to hurt your career, right? It just, so you walk out confused, wondering if maybe you were being too aggressive, too sensitive, too something, right? It is just exhausting trying to manage people's emotions in this way, but it tends to just really affect us. So, the emotional impact of this one, though, you stop advocating for yourself. You start over editing something or everything you say before you even say it. You are so focused on how you're coming across that you lose track of what you were trying to say in the first place. So, with this, your self question for this side before a difficult conversation, write down what you want to address in one sentence. Like, I want you to think about like how Do you want someone to receive what you have to say? So, because after the conversation, I want you to come back to that sentence. Did the conversation address it, or did it end up with you defending yourself instead? And the answer to that question is really important information, right? Because you really want to see on what this person is trying to do. Sign number 4, they use your vulnerabilities or past against you. And this is the one that be like the archetype keeper. And so we might find ourselves in these things too. So if you find yourself in this, just it could be you gaslighting yourself or other people. Happens. But we want to be aware of it. You trusted this person, you opened up, you shared things about your past, your pain, your history, the way you do when you love someone and believe they love you back. And now they use it. Not always, obviously. Sometimes it's subtle. Well, you know how you are. You always assume the worst. This is just your abandonment issues talking. I know your ex did this to you, but I'm not him. Stop projecting. I know you have known this one person that has done this. They take the sacred things you shared and turned them into weapons. And the coolest part that makes you feel like your pain is a character, like a character flaw, like healing is a liability. So, an example of this is that you once shared with a close friend that you struggle with anxiety. Now, every time you raise a concern about the friendship, she says, "You're spiraling again. You do this when your anxiety flares up." And you start to wonder, is this my anxiety? Or is this really a problem that I'm being trained to dismiss? I really want you to be able to think about these things because I think we don't realize when we're doing it. And I want you to know the emotional impact for someone that is doing this is that you stop sharing, you stop being vulnerable, you close off the very thing that makes connection possible, that authenticity. And sometimes you even stop trusting your own perceptions because someone has convinced you your history disqualifies you from actually reading in the present and just accurately reading in the present. So, your self question for the sign is your past shaped you. It did not break your ability to perceive reality, right? So, ask yourself if there concrete present day evidence for what I'm feeling, right? If yes, your history is not explanation. Your feelings are. I know this is going to be tough to kind of hear, right? So, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you just kind of staying with me while you hear these signs. Sign number 5, they call you too sensitive, dramatic, or crazy whenever you raise a concern. This is what I call the label maker at this point, because this is a sign is one of the most culturally specific ones I want to name for just you. Because for Black and brown women in general, being called too sensitive or dramatic or emotional or too aggressive, right, doesn't just land as a personal insult. It lands against a lifetime of being told that our emotions are a problem, that we're aggressive when we're just being assertive or passionate about what we're saying, that we're a lot when we simply have standards. That's crazy. Right. So this sign hits differently for us and the people in our lives who use these labels. Okay. So even whether know consciously or not, deep, exactly how deep those wounds go. So every time you bring a legitimate concern, you get labeled. And a lot of times it's not addressed or not heard. It's just labeled. There you go again. Why do you always have to make everything so heavy? Or you're being dramatic. You know how you get. Like these are things that are said to us constantly. So an example, you being in a relationship for like 3 years, every time you raise something that hurt you, his tone, his disappearing acts, his dismissiveness, he shakes his head and says, You're too sensitive. I can't say anything without you making it a whole thing. And over time, you stop raising things at all because being labeled feels worse. And I mean, a lot of times it feels worse than even being hurt. So the emotional impact, you silence yourself, you perform calm, you don't feel, and then you start to wonder whether you actually are too much, whether the problem really has been you all along. So we tend to just kind of keep just start end up being just kind of gaslighting ourselves and make us think that we're the problem. So your self-trust question for this side, are you labeled or am I being heard, right? Those are two profoundly different things. You deserve a second one. Sign number 6, do you leave conversations feeling confused, guilty, or disconnected from yourself? So I call this just kind of the fog machine. This sign is about what happens after the conversation, not during, but after. You went in clear, you knew what you needed to say, and you came out foggy, disoriented, somehow guilty for something you can't quite name. So, replaying the conversation, trying to figure out where it all went sideways, you just constantly feel like you're having to just figure it out for yourself. So, you're not confused because you were wrong. You're, you're confused because the conversation was designed, right? Whether consciously or not, to produce exactly that result. And this can happen in romantic relationships, in conversations with a parent, in meetings with a difficult colleague. Like the pattern is the same. You walk in grounded and you walk out feeling untethered from yourself. So, one example of this is you have a conversation with your co parent about the kids, just the kid schedule. And you came in with clear ask. If we just one clear ask, and you leave feeling like somehow you owe them, you owe him an apology. You're not even sure about what you can apologize for. You spend the rest of the day trying to reconstruct what happened. And we don't realize the emotional impact this has when we do something like this or when this happens to us. You stop initiating important conversations. Right? The confusion becomes so consistently painful that avoidance feels safer than trying. And the relationship slowly becomes one where you can never address anything to heal. So, your self trust question for this sign is right after a difficult conversation, before you do anything else, just check in with your body. Notice where you feel tight. Write down two things: what you want, what you went to wanting to say, and how you feel now that it's over. That gap of information, I want you to honor it. Sign number 7, you have started relying on them to tell you what is real. I like to be able to call this just kind of a borrowed reality because we don't realize, because this is a sign in my clinical experience, it indicates the deepest level of impact. And I say that not to alarm you, but because I want you to understand how serious this is and how completely it is not your fault. We don't even realize this is happening. When someone is consistently denying your reality, minimizing your feelings, and labels you as the problem, eventually something starts shifting. You stop consulting yourself first. You start consulting them and then getting all the external validation. Did that really happen the way I think it did? You ask them. Am I overreacting? You ask them. Am I being crazy? You're asking them. And then what we do is that we tend to wait for their answer because at some point, your own answers stop feeling trustworthy enough. So, an example, you're at a family gathering and something happens that makes you deeply uncomfortable. But before you even process your own reaction, your first thought is, I'll ask him later if I'm reading this right. Not a friend, not yourself, him. The person who has spent months telling you that your readings were wrong. So, as you can tell, this has an emotional impact. But this is where the deepest disconnection from self lives. When you outsource your reality to the person responsible for distorting it, you lose access to yourself in a way that takes real intentional work to rebuild. So, your self trust question for this time, the next time you have a strong feeling, pause before asking anyone else to validate it. Write it down first. I felt blank when blank happened. That is yours. It doesn't need external approval to exist. I really want you to be able to take this in and writing these things down to really be able to know that your feelings are valid, your experiences are valid. So I just want to be able to offer just a safety note within this. Before we move into what to do next, I want to pause and say something important. For most people, what we've talked about today describes confusing, painful, emotionally damaging patterns that absolutely deserve attention and care. Okay. I just want to be clear about that. But for some of you, what I've described may exist alongside something more, just more serious. So if you feel unsafe in your relationship, if you're afraid of how someone will respond when you speak up, if you feel controlled or monitored, if you have ever been threatened, please do not navigate that alone. I want for you to reach out to someone you trust. You can contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is 1-800-799-7233. They're available 24 hours a day, and they can help you think through your opinions, your options without pressure or judgment, if that is the case for you. And I say this not to alarm you. I say it because your safety is not negotiable. And recognizing these signs, I want you to know it's an act of courage. Because whatever your next, just think about what whatever your next looks like. It is an act of courage. So now we get the safety out the way. Let's kind of talk about rebuilding that self-trust, right? What to do next is going to be the main thing. So, all right. So now let's talk about where you go from here, because understanding what's been happening in the beginning, not the end, right? And so it is only the beginning. I just wanted to emphasize that for you because I want you to be able to write these steps down. So please get a notebook, paper if you haven't already. Step one, I want you to write things down before and after. Okay, this is practical and it matters deeply because a difficult conversation, it can be challenging. So I'll write down what you want to address. After, write down how you want to feel. These just records. This document belongs to you. They exist outside of anyone else's version of the events. They are your anchor to your own truth. And this is not about building a case against anyone. Like I wanted to be put at that as that, but this is about having a place where your reality lives that no one can just reach in and try to rewrite, because that's what gaslighting is. They just rewrite your own reality. So step two, I want you to pause before accepting blame. I think a lot of times we tend to blame ourselves. So when a conversation ends with you feeling like a problem, or pause before, I want you to pause before taking that in as your truth. Not forever though, just for a minute, right? Ask yourself, did someone address my concern or did they redirect it back at me? And know you're allowed to sit with your original feeling a little bit longer before you decide it was wrong. I think a lot of times you just start to over apologize, to not have the tension versus really thinking about and pausing beforehand. Step 3, I want you to do a reality check with someone emotionally safe, right? Especially when someone's gaslighting, you need someone to have that reality check, but I want you to choose someone carefully. It does not automatically mean your family, right? Because that's someone who will tell you what you want to hear, someone who will tell you the truth with kindness, though, like a friend, a sister, a therapist, a mentor who knows you and can reflect back what they see. Just something, especially when you're in a situation that's like this. And this matters because reality twisting isolates you from your perception. And so, and also from other people too. I don't want to forget that. So reconnecting with a trusted person is going to be important. Reconnecting with a trusted person is part of how you find your way back. Okay. And the next is going to be step 4. I want you to focus on patterns, not isolated incidents. One difficult conversation is not a pattern. One moment of forgetfulness is not a pattern. What you're looking for is whether this happens consistently, whether this is a predictable shape to your interaction with this person. So patterns are the story, right? I think a lot of times we focus more on the moment versus the patterns of the person. So understand that individual moments are just sentences. It's not. So really pay attention to those patterns. Step 5, I want you to come back to your body. You know, we always talk about this. Come back to your body. Your nervous system is keeping a record, even when your mind is too confused to make sense of things. Notice where you carry tension after certain conversations. Notice whether your shoulders relax or tighten around certain people. Notice what your body does before, during, and after interactions. Those things are going to be really important. Understand that your body has been telling you the truth this entire time. Give it permission to be heard. That's really going to be just important for you to take in, right? And step 6, I need you to be able to seek professional support if it's accessible to you, right? Because what we've talked about today is real, and it is heavy, and it is not something you should have to carry or sort through alone. A therapist who understands just relational trauma can be able to help you through this, right? And rebuild that self-trust just within yourself. And I want you to be able to have it. And just I wanted for you to be able to have someone to help you build that trust in a way that it sticks, not just intellectually, but in your nervous system and in your body and the way you move through the world. If you're not sure where to start, movingbodyou.org, we have lots and lots of blogs and posts. We have to talk about all these different things to be able to assist you through your journey. You can search if you need something specific. And I'm here week after week, so make sure you subscribe, right? We are kind of getting close to our 1,000, so I'm just so excited to have you guys come here week after week and have these conversations with you. So now, I know this was a lot that we've talked about. I want to close with something I need you to actually hear. Know that you didn't end up here because something was wrong with you. I want to just make that clear. You ended up here because you loved. And that's a beautiful thing. You loved someone or trusted someone or needed someone. And they use that love as an access point that is not on you just because you decided to put love out there. Nothing wrong with that. That's not your failure. Understand that is a wound. And wounds heal when they're finally allowed to see the light. If you recognize yourself in any of these 7 signs, I'm not asking you to make any set of decisions. This is not what this is for. Right? I'm not asking you to blow up your life. No, I'm not saying that. I'm asking you to start trusting your own perceptions again, slowly, gently, but with support before someone else's version of reality just starts to become the only one you know how to access. Because here is what I know to be true. Right? And I really want you to take this in. Confusion is not proof that you are the problem. Sometimes
confusion is just information. That's just what it is. And so you are worthy and deserve relationships where you can trust your own mind, your own voice, and your own reality. And that's not too much to ask. That's a minimum. And you are worth more than the minimum, right? So, and you are worth, like, I need you to just really take that in. We're worth the minimum, more than the minimum, okay? So here's what I need from you before you close. Make sure to follow us, right? And to share with someone who would need this so we can get out to more people and be able to share, get more people healed out here, right? And making sure that they know the 7 signs and making sure that they know that they're not going crazy, right? I want you to hit the notification bell as well. So make sure you get access to every episode. This is a community we're building week by week, episode by episode, and you belong in it. Share this video with someone who has been just questioning themselves. You don't have to explain why you're sending it. Just send it. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do for someone you love is put the right words in front of them. So definitely drop a comment below. I'd love to hear just what your takeaway was from this, what you'd want to know more about. I'm just so excited that we get to continue just to be having this conversation with each other. So I will see you next week. Talk to you soon.